Next up, we have Max Bear, who is the Historic Preservation Officer from the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes.
Max comes to the podium and Lori Lee passes out sheets of paper. Text, Plains Indian Warriors Honoring Historic Footprints 1875 to 1878. Rewriting History, Cheyenne Warriors from Sand Creek to Fort Marion. Max Bear, Historic Preservation Officer, Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes of Oklahoma.
Pivishe, Monteveo na Hashive, na sisters, na Hatawo, na Vita Pahatana, na Matsa Hatania, na Natak, na Nataki Viho.
Max straightens his shoulders and looks around the room.
If Manifest Destiny had not happened, or the Doctrine of Discovery had never been written, you probably would have recognized some of them words I just said. I just introduced myself, tell you where I came from, tell you what tribe I am. I'm Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Kiowa. And that's my grandma right there, and she told me I was a direct descendant of my aunt, my Kiowa side. I have Cheyennes that were down here too. So a lot of my family were still down here, but my first time ever coming was last year. And I expected to see Fort Marion, but I ran into Castillo de San Marco. But all those words I just said, that was common language on our people, Cheyenne words. And a lot of us probably would have recognized that, because if you went to a foreign country, you'd hear their language, Greek, Spanish. I've been to some of them countries. Bahrain, you always hear all their languages. It would have been the same thing had all this not happened. And we just worked together a long time ago. What had happened, way back there.
Max looks down at his paper on the podium.
But, so when I came to Castillo de San Marco, I asked for their little pamphlet that you get at national parks all the time. Tells you everything, history and whatnot, and who, what, when, where, what took place there. And they gave me the pamphlet. It was probably a little bit bigger than this, maybe a legal size paper. And I was reading it, and then they were tying certain things in from our aspects of our relation with the government. Cheyenne and Arapaho relation with the government. That was always been good. But I found one excerpt in there from Sand Creek Massacre, and they were trying to tie it together with the prisoners at Fort Marion. So when I was reading this pamphlet, I said, I always get called on at home from different ones, or families, or schools, and I come in, I do lectures just like this, and maybe it might be something on a certain topic. And I gave you all a piece of paper, and I'll explain that here in a little bit, but all those have little points. And that's not all of them, that's just some of them. Some of the highlights in there that we had engagements with the U.S. government, and those explain those a little bit. So when I read that paper, that pamphlet there, and I was thinking, this doesn't explain why these guys are prisoners. To me, they're not prisoners because I grew up in amongst our traditions. I'm a veteran. I'm a war veteran. I'm a society veteran on our Cheyenne societies. I'm a Kit Fox society man. And some of those words that I just said explained all that. Also, I'm a former prince of the Cheyennes. Hey. That was one of those words. No, I'm just kidding. So my title is over here in Memo now. So I'm getting ready to be a king, Cheyenne. Just kidding. Just kidding. My hair is too wild, so I look like a wild Indian. Oh, so never mind. No, but I get called to do lectures or anything about certain topics, and then you can't really explain the Sand Creek Massacre and talk about the Sand Creek Massacre without offering a little bit brief history about our people and how our people work and our government. And we all have similarities. Cheyenne and Arapaho's had a lot of similarities too. But we're all different. We're all different. We have our own backgrounds, our own stories, our own books about us, even our own perspective. So the title of this is Rewriting History, Cheyenne Warriors. I'm not rewriting history. I'm telling a history that hasn't been told yet. But I'm going to use what's already in history books to reword or offer a different perspective on the relationship between our government and our people, because I think that's important. Because it brought me to a question that I had to ask myself. Were these prisoners of war? I'm a veteran, I'm a war veteran. Or were they captives? If you understand our history and everything that we have, a relationship, you would understand something a little different. It's common for us to all say, prisoners of war down in Fort Marion. We had a powwow a long time ago honoring the Fort Marion prisoners. So that's what I was expecting when I came up here to find Fort Marion, but Castillo, San Marco. So it's erased. But what's that word prisoners do to somebody, even if they're after they served their time and stuff, you know? It's hard to live up to or whatever. But that was part of the relationship that the government had with us. That's what they put on us, along with savages, merciless Indian savages, something else, or indigenous creatures. Those words are put on us, and they're hard to shake off, hard to shake. But I didn't want to do that because I know my traditions. I know these men that were on these walls, within these walls over here. I know because I'm a society man too. I'm a warrior. I'm a veteran. I understood how they thought because I grew up with my traditions, and I understand my relationship with Nishkimanet, Mother Earth. So all that's instilled. But I didn't learn any of this stuff in school. Like I said, I learned it from books and our history. But I had also the opportunity to ask questions to elders back in our old day when I still had the chance. And I had an uncle that did a lot of research in history too. So there was a lot of folks like that back in when I was growing up, when I was young. John Sipes was one of them. Ruby Sheridan, Terry Wilson, some of those that collected our history. Craig Moore did a lot of genealogy history for our people alone. Bernard Allball, he worked at the boarding school at Concho, Oklahoma. He did a lot of genealogy history with the students there, traced their lineage. All that stuff is still there. So this piece of paper they handed out to you after I visited Castillo de San Marco and I read that pamphlet, I knew we had to do something. We had to change the perspective of the way people are thinking, of what the rangers are going to tell people when they come here. Because people come from all over the world, and they still don't know why Cheyenne and Arapaho people are here or who Cheyenne and Arapaho people are. And we have to change that for ourselves. They don't understand fully what we know, what we go through. So we're going to help the national park to better learn from us so they can tell our story here when we're not here. Reword everything, different perspective, those kind of things. So I'm not rewriting history because it's been said here already. You can't rewrite history, can't change it. I'm not doing that. I'm just telling you our history that hasn't been written down yet. Our perspective for our people. And we developed this short timeline, and we've added in, took away, edited it, and we were able to come up with just a short little one-page timeline just to help increase the knowledge of the rangers and the national park, to tell our story when we're not here. But that's only a drop in the bucket because you got to understand how our Cheyenne way of life is. And we still have a lot of those traditions, protocols, and procedures that we have to live by every day. And as veterans, we have a little more to think about. Warriors amongst our people. So, me and my staff, we went through all the history books. And I took what I know to put down as much as I could on this. And it's still not the complete story. But like I said, our Cheyenne Arapaho people, we had our own laws. We had our own economy, just like our indigenous relatives, all up and down the plains. We had our own laws. We had our own medicine. I had our own medicine for just about every sickness, if not all of them, to heal ourselves on this land. We had the science. We had the science of flora, fauna, especially the buffalo. The buffalo provided us with a lot: food, shelter, clothing, even weapons at some time.
He bows his head with his hands braced against the podium.
As Cheyenne people, we have to take care of that. It doesn't belong to us. We have to take care of it, just like it takes care of us. It's a system. That's the way it works.
He glances at his notes.
So you can research all these little tidbits in here.
He counts to himself.
I did. I started learning about my history about when I was in the Navy. And I got gifted a book that was about Cheyennes. And I started reading it, and it was interesting. So I went out to find more books about our history and our people and different things like that. So that's where my knowledge came from. I didn't go to college to do this. I went to college for something different else. But I sat through some history classes and heard the professor say, yeah, savage this, savage that, when they got to the part where they talked about, manifest destiny. But manifest destiny to us was an invasion in our homeland to everything that I just explained, our science, our economy, our people, our way of life. That was an invasion. We were never at war with the government. We never declared war. We were always on the defense. We were fighting against an invasion of our way of life and our people. We even also made peace with our enemies just to get through that.
He stares out at the audience.
We lost, but we're still here. They didn't get rid of all of us. We lost the land. We lost a lot of our rights. One of the rights is still coming up now in our current times, talking about more money from us. That's us paying the government to have our own tags, to have our own land, to have our own borders, that kind of thing. We had a trivia question a while back amongst our tribal employees, and one of the questions was how many treaties were the Cheyenne Arapahos involved in? And nobody came up with a clear answer, but I think in the end they decided on 8 or something like that, if I remember. My answer was...
He makes a 0 with his hand.
0.
He holds the 0 in the air.
Because these treaties weren't in Cheyenne, they weren't in Arapaho. They didn't use our words. You can't translate everything that was on those treaties into Cheyenne or into Arapaho. They didn't understand how our government worked. We had a council of 44 on Cheyenne, and when the Arapahos, they had, we had a council of 44 chiefs. 40 of them represented the 10 bands, and 4 of them came from there. And from those bands, they nominated 4 more to make a governing body out of the chiefs. But our society warriors, those were the governing body. The chiefs were the peacekeepers.
Max leans his weight on the podium again.
Not one person can speak up for another Cheyenne. Not one person can speak up for the whole entire body of our people. It takes a collective. That Cheyenne Council, our Warrior Council, and what they decide on, they'll let the people know, and that's the decision. So these treaties were never legal to us. Even though they're ratified, government and all that stuff, they were never legal to us because we didn't understand them. They could have told us anything that was on that paper.
He holds up his sheet.
Could have been a menu.
Max shrugs at the audience.
Either way, it wasn't legal to us. So those treaties, of them trying to make us stick to those treaties, we couldn't understand borders. We couldn't understand fences. That's what caused the problems.
He glances down at his hands.
With our relationship with the government. That's why we were always on the defense. We were always taking losses. We were given a few bests. It was defense. We didn't declare war.
His eyes search the page.
Until 1875. And that was because Custer had came into a Cheyenne camp because he was almost under attack, and one of his scouts knew what lodge he had to make it to. So as he rolled into camp, all the warriors were getting ready to attack him, but he made a run for that special lodge. No violence takes place at that lodge. So he ran in there. He was talking to that priest, that main man that we had, that covenant keeper.
He clasps his hands.
That keeper told him in our language,
He gestures with joined hands.
don't ever do violence against our people. Otherwise, you'll be just like this. And he poured his ashes that they were smoking, that pipe, poured it on his boot.
He shifts his weight from foot to foot.
Custer never kept his promise. So that's when we declared war. And we teamed up with the other tribes, the Sioux, the Arapaho. And we went and met them at what we call now is where long hair got rubbed out. The Sioux call it greasy grass, or the Little Bighorn River. That's where that warriors finally got together, coordinated, worked out tactics. That's where we won our victory. We killed Custer that day, and we won the Guidon. We're the only nation in the country that ever captured the flag. That's the only time we went to war. Other than that, we were always on the defense.
Max looks down at his paper.
We have 3 main massacres that were against us that caused these things. Young warriors wanted to get revenge. First one was in Sand Creek Massacre, 1864. Over 200 women, children, elderly. It was a chief's camp. Chiefs were peaceful. And the Sand Creek Massacre happened because the government told them to go down and camp on that Sandy Creek down there. And you won't be bothered because we're going to give you a United States flag and we're going to give you a white flag of truce. And you put that up on a pole, we won't bother you. But it wasn't like that. They knew exactly where they were, and they went down there, and they massacred them early in the morning. And they would have killed everybody because that massacre lasted all day, 8 hours long. Had 2 soldiers not raise their guns and ordered their company not to fire on any of them. So that allowed some people to escape. That's where I come from. Chief Black White Man was a survivor there. That was my great-great-grandpa. I'm 5 generations away from that. That's where my nephew over here gets his name, White Man. That Black White Man was cut down, Mut Da Viha. My mom's name was cut down to White. But we're from the same family. We come from Black White Man, Chief Black White Man. He doesn't know all that. I had to go out and research all that. It's not in any books. There's nobody to help out, but you have to search all this stuff.
Max rearranges the items on the podium.
So 4 years, that caused hurt, pain amongst our warriors. They wanted revenge. There's a lot of chiefs are telling them, no, you're going to lose.
He looks across the audience.
Try to hold them back, but no, our societies make the rules. That's how it works. What they say, we do. They were going to defend ourselves again. 4 years later, Ouachita Massacre, almost the same thing. Go down on that river, camp. We know Chief Blackketter wants peace. Custer wanted to prove something. So he went there early in the morning, attacked that village, killed nearly everybody. And they wiped out over 700 horses that belonged to Cheyennes there. And they took 50 women and children as captives, prisoners of war, what they were called. They took them to Ouachita, or they took them to Fort Supply.
He makes an open-ended gesture.
In the history books, you won't find out what happened to them. It was those oral stories that we had to rely on to find out what happened to those women and children that Custer took. And he took them as a shield, as a bargaining tool for his life.
Max stands tall and solid at the front of the room.
That was Ouachita Massacre. 1 year later, they massacred the dog soldiers in Summit Springs, northeastern Colorado. We call it the massacre at White Buttes. And they nearly killed everybody there too. And then the surprise attack. The dog soldiers staked themselves down and they were killed.
He looks at his notes and steadies himself before speaking.
So after that, that's when the Red River Wars started. And that's another chapter. And that includes all of us that are here too, all our relatives. Kiowas, Comanches. We were going to fight for our freedom to stay free, not bound up on the reservation, because the reservation and the treaties weren't being followed. A lot of annuities that we were supposed to get weren't coming to the people. Some of them were ending up in private hands being sold somewhere else or taken for themselves. We may have got half of what was promised to us, or maybe even if that. So that's what led into the Red River Wars. We wanted to stay free, hunt the buffalo. At this time, the buffalo was starting to decline drastically. A lot more settlers start moving in. And after the Treaty of Fort Wise, 1861, there was probably about 150,000 migrants moving into the plains. A lot of them couldn't handle it, though, but about 40,000 remained. It was right in the heart of our Cheyenne, Arapaho, and all our plains indigenous tribes land right there, because of gold was discovered in the Rockies. And that's what started. We need to build forts to protect all the people who are coming out here to get some gold and make their riches. So all these forts weren't built in support for our people. They were built to control our people on our own land.
With his weight on the podium, Max reads his notes. He straightens before speaking.
So after the Red River Wars, that was justification for prisoners. Let's send some prisoners out. Somebody's got to pay for these atrocities.
He drums his fingers.
So when we were finally, all the ones that were finally done fighting or couldn't fight anymore, and we went and didn't want to fight because we didn't want to be annihilated. We never surrendered. We went up there to do what we could do.
He looks across the audience.
For the survival of our way of life and our people. That's what those men represent right there. They did what they had to do for the survival of our way of life. They didn't surrender. They had no choice. Otherwise, we were going to be wiped out. It was in our prophecies, it's saying that we're going to be wiped out. We're going to assimilate.
He taps his finger on the podium.
That's what their responsibility was.
He points to the wall behind him.
That's a heavy burden to carry, to send themselves down here. Because none of them were on trial. None of them ever had a trial.
He clasps his hands at his stomach.
1 mile away from where we work, Concho, is where this Battle of Sand Hill took place. And that was when they were, in 1875, they were shackling them up. And it was right there on our reservation, because it talks about Caddo Springs, and Caddo Springs is right across the street from where my office is.
Max looks down at the podium thoughtfully.
That's where they were. There was a blacksmith shackling them all up. And the commanding officer that was there that day, he got so drunk, he got to the number, 12? So he randomly picked 18 other men that were just standing around, and like somebody said, they were just standing around seeing what's going on. They got picked. Now they're there.
He gestures again to the wall behind him.
18 of them without justice. So that's why I ask, were they really prisoners of war? Me being a veteran? The actual definition of prisoners of war, if I'm not mistaken, is being taken.
He looks at the ceiling.
Being captured by belligerent power during battle or immediately after battle. If I'm not mistaken, that's the definition. So I'm trying to work my way around, are these prisoners? We categorize them as prisoners.
He points to a word on his podium notes sheet.
Captives is the best term I think we can use for these men that were down here, these women. And there was a child down here too. Because I seen those masks.
He takes a deep breath.
Back in March for the first time in real life.
Max licks his lips.
And it angered me because there was a 9-year-old kid there. Had his mask on there too. And I think he was a Comanche or something like that. But there was a 9-year-old kid that had the mask there. I didn't cry. That made me angry. Because who has the audacity to do something like that to a child?
He lowers his head and moves his finger along his notes.
But I'm not rewriting history. I'm just telling you my perspective, the way I think, because of who I am
He moves the page.
and what I know. And in this position I carry, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, carries a lot of weight with it because we have an official government-to-government communication line.
He gestures with his hands.
Either our office or the executive office has those two lines of communication. So it's important for this position to make sure that the national parks that involve where our historical footprint are telling an accurate story for us in our place when we're not there. We've got to teach them our perspective of this. So that's why I try hard not to call these men prisoners, because they didn't do anything different than any of us would have done for our way of life, our people,
Max counts off on his fingers.
and our grandmother.
He drops both hands to the podium.
We take care of this Mother Earth. That is our mandate. Each one of ours mandate, because she provides for us, gave us everything we needed. Had somebody sat down with one of us, we could have came up with a pretty good treaty of telling them how to live amongst this land. Watch us. That's all you had to do. And we can help you live. We didn't ever over-harvest it. We never over-killed anything. We had a symbiotic relationship with this earth and all our relatives around us, even though we had quarrels and stuff. So that's why I come to the point where these men here, to me, are captives, because I would have done the same thing. I would have been right there with them
Max gestures back at the wall.
to defend my way of life for everybody, because I've already done it already. I took an oath to the United States to defend everybody in this room.
He points to the audience.
Not just my people, everybody. But I also have a mandate to take care of my people, and that's what I did too when I took that oath and went to the United States Navy. And I served 4 years. And it took me to war, and it brought me home. And I'm here, and I'm able to tell you these things. But that's what we're doing with the National Park, and I appreciate y'all listening to me and let me help do this, because I want y'all to learn to tell our story when we're not here. We're not always going to be here. But we have also an opportunity and a responsibility to do that with all the other national parks or the historic sites that have our footprint on them too. And like I said, I talked with the other Thippos. I think we need to form a coalition for our state and our tribe to carry on our story, our perspective, our rewording. We're not rewriting history. We can't change it. We're just telling the story that hasn't been written down thus far. But that's all I got to say, and I appreciate y'all listening to me. And hinahane. Niashimeme.
Max closes the manila folder with his notes and leaves the podium, his expression solemn. Noreen stands, pushes in her chair, and makes her way from the panelist table. She gestures to Julie, who approaches from the opposite direction.
I think we're just going to take a quick break. Oh, I see a...
I just wanted to say, there's a lot of wars, massacres happened. 1891, the last massacre, Wounded Knee. There was a Sioux warrior named Plenty Horses. He shot and killed an Army officer. They took him to trial for murder. And through deliberations, they said it was a time of war. Otherwise, all the natives that they had murdered in Wounded Knee, they should be tried. So they said, oh, it's a time of war. He was just acting in a time of war. So, it's history, it's there, but it's not brought up in the mainstream history. And even today, there's a movie out, Killers of the Flower Moon. There's a lot of injustice in there. And you think, oh, that happened a long time ago. It's happening today. Not, car tags are just the tip of it. So, the history needs to be told, needs to be corrected.
History has been whitewashed.
Yep, that's right.
Also, in the next chapter after this Fort Marion, they got back. During that time, it was started in the boarding school area. Some of these men went straight up to Carlisle. We went to Carlisle this past year, same thing. A lot of that's being erased up there. But you got the Pratt Hall, the Jim Thorpe gymnasium there. Those gymnasium that is named after Jim Thorpe, those kids that went to school there bought and paid for, even built that gymnasium. I recommended them to change that name to the gym they built, because they paid for it. They built it because that was part of their trade, to learn masonry. When they went out in town to work with all the rich folks, I guess that's slave labor. That's the money that they brought in to pay for that gym. But it's named Jim Thorpe. That railroad track that they came in on is covered up, completely fenced off, all overgrown. You can't even see it from Carlisle. You have to go way back there against the fence and look in there. And you'll see that train track where those kids came. Some of those kids last ride. We still have 6 children up there that are, no, we have 15 children that are buried up there. We have one child that was buried in an unknown grave because they forgot where they put him. We're not sure if we can get him home at the same time, because next year we're going up there to bring those kids home.
Audience members nod.
Because they didn't get proper burials. We're going to take them home to our reservation. But that's that next chapter, that Carlisle, that boarding school area, that there is still going on too. That chapter hasn't closed yet. But that's all I have to say about that portion.
Julie leans toward the microphone.
Thank you. We'll take a quick break. Sorry.
My mother is a product of boarding school being taken,
The audience turns to see the speaker.
just being taken and put in boarding school when she was 8 years old. She didn't know English. She was punished all the time for speaking her own language because that's all she knew. It's right here.
The speaker rubs Rita's back.
There's a lot of them that were taken like that. Were you in boarding school too? Fort Sill Indian School. Riverside. They were just taken. They didn't go on their free will. They were taken from their homes. And their parents, their people couldn't see them, couldn't talk to them, couldn't help them, couldn't get them out of there. They were taken and put there and left there.
Rita brushes off her knee.
That was the government.
A lot of times the state, for Oklahoma DHS, legally kidnaps our children today even. I grew up in the system. I went to several boarding schools. I went to a lot of boarding schools, and then, of course, I was in several children's homes. I was adopted 3 times and returned to the system because they didn't want me. I was too much. I was too much. I don't know if it's just because I was angry or because I didn't know where I belonged or because I didn't belong or because somebody, I just wasn't wanted. I don't know that. I know that my behavior was really bad. I wasn't an easy child. So the system gladly took me, and then, of course, even in the boarding schools that I went to, I went to Concho and Chilocco. They weren't fun. There was nothing fun about them. I don't really remember being abused there. I was really neglected. I was kind of invisible, I remember that, and I know that I didn't have any family. I didn't have anybody, and there was no affection ever. I don't ever remember being held or somebody loving me or telling me the emotional nurturing that we do. I don't remember that. I've had to learn that. It's kind of self-taught, so sometimes I'm not really affectionate towards my own children or my own grandchildren. So I'm still learning. I'm still learning to do that. And I know that there's a lot of injustices, and I know there's a lot of horrors, and there's a lot of pain. And I know that we have to come through that, and it is our responsibility. I'm so grateful for you ladies that are here that came. I know it's a hard trip. I know it's a long trip for you, but I'm so grateful that you were here, and I'm so
Noreen holds back tears.
humbled that you would take time out of your life and come down here and honor these captives and honor your families and honor mine.